All right. You know what? You know what? I doubt this stream is going to happen because YouTube is being fucking competent right now. It keeps saying in the emails that my stream has violated some sort of community guideline, which it hasn't. It really, really hasn't. I'm just here to read a book. That's all I'm here to do. And literally, like I said, I'm not doing this for me, not doing this to be famous on YouTube. I'm just doing this because I love to talk about this stuff. I love to talk about cryptids. I love to talk about ghosts. I love to talk about the paranormal. I love to talk about the unknown. And YouTube is taking down the stream for no fucking reason. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's just some troll out there or something just reporting my videos or this live stream or whatever the fuck's going on. But no, I'm legit getting pissed off because really all I want to do is just read the book. That's all I want to do is read the book. So, and I don't know why, but I keep getting these emails from YouTube. Let me read these. Let me read these. Hi, Cryptocast. As you may know, community guidelines describe which content we allow and don't allow on YouTube. Your video Cryptocast livestream Ghost of St. Charles finale was flagged to us for review. Upon review, we've determined that it violates our community guidelines and we've removed it from YouTube. How is anything that I've said a violation of YouTube? I legit have not said anything bad and or anything that I'm not supposed to say, and it keeps taking it down. And I'm gonna have to appeal these, honestly, which is gonna be a big hassle to do. Oh, fuck. Okay. I know what's going on now. So, yeah, due to due to what's going on right now, there's not a lot of staff at YouTube, and so they have an algorithm now, like a robot or an algorithm or something that is just in charge of everything. So that explains it. That explains it. So really, if this keeps going on, I may not be able to stream until this is all done and resolved. I'm hoping I'll still be able to do normal videos, but I don't know. All I want to do is just read my cryptid book to people. I mean, my Ghost of St. Charles book to people. We're so close to finishing it. That's all I want to do is just finish this book. And I. This is honestly just sad. This is literally the one thing that I was looking forward to since I've been stuck at home for the past um 3.5 days. Like, yeah, 3.5 days. This is the one thing that I've been looking forward to doing. And the thing is, now it might not happen because of YouTube. And it's honestly just really upsetting. This is honestly just fucking depressing. Well, we're at the 5 minute mark, so We haven't made it there yet, so I'll start. I'll see how far we get, but I doubt we'll get far. But hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to Cryptocast, your source for all things crypto-related, unknown, and paranormal. I'm your host, Parker, and today we're going to be finishing the book Ghost of St. Charles I've been reading. We're on the last chapter of it, the last stretch of the book, so we're going to try to get this done. I did have some really fun interactive streams planned for this week, but if they keep taking my streams down, I don't know if I'll be able to do them. So we'll see if I'm able to get this stream in, and if not, there's gonna be there's gonna be no streams for a while until I get this figured out. Cause let's just read the book. Let's just read the book. Mhm. Yeah, all we have is all we have is 26 pages left, so we'll get there, hopefully. Hopefully. But yeah, no, I hope everyone out there is doing all right. You know, yeah, no, I'm gonna read. I was gonna wait an extra 5 minutes just so to see if I was kind of in the clear, but I'm just gonna start, and if I get cut off again. So this is called a little girl lost. The ownership of 515 South Main reads like a who's who of St. Charles. The location was apparently first developed in the form of a rude log structure by Joseph Robideau, a French fur trader. He sold the block to Charles Tyon on April 2nd, 1807. Hey, that anniversary's coming up. For $500, payable in skins. Yeah, skin trading and fur trading was pretty much like their main source of income and everything back then. Jesus, this computer's like screen is like super small, so. Tyon lived on the property for several years in a house that probably faced Pike Street. In 1821, William Eckert bought the block for $1,500, including the large frame house now located there. Eckert opened a tavern and hotel, and the entire block was known as Tavern Square. It was the center of town until the 1860s. The business was known as the St. Charles Hotel until Eckert's death in 1846. Local legend says that the Santa Fe Trail passed here, but in many cases it was a popular stop for stagecoaches and for people migrating to the west. Originally, the building was large, two-story structure facing Main Street. The second story was destroyed in 1860. Excuse me. In the 1867 tornado and rebuilt as it appears today. The tavern was well between 1818 and 1846, supported by the migration of various expeditions to the west. The western house at the corner of Boone's Lick Road and Main Street was the starting site for the rougher crowd, but Eckert's Tavern was the starting site for the middle class, farmers, and the more gentle. In 1806, General Zebulon M. Pike, that is a name, Zebulon M. Pike, left St. Charles and went up the Missouri and Osage rivers. He then traveled overland westward to the Rocky Mountains. He had been commissioned to explore the western and southwestern parts of Louisiana Purchase territory. In what is now Colorado, Pike discovered the famous mountain peak that still bears his name, Pike's Peak. His expedition started at Eckert's Tavern in a 1909 interview William F. Broadhead noted, at the time that St. Charles was the first state capital, there were many taverns or inns. They were never called hotels in those days. One of the most popular was Eckert's Tavern, which was near the old Methodist church. They were known as the Sign of the Buffalo. Now, you understand a great number of travelers passed through St. Charles at this time, looking for a place to locate, and St. Charles was certainly the gateway to the West. The travelers bought tobacco, clothes, shoes, wagons, and horses. In practically every house, the people lived upstairs and sold their wares on the main floor. The Boonslick Road in my early days was the most traveled road in Missouri, crowded with travelers and stock. And this is Eckert's Tavern as it appears today. It is actually a place called Braden's right now. Braden's, however you pronounce it. In 1820, a short distance along Main Street, Boonslick Road was established as a stagecoach-worthy road to Franklin, Missouri. In 1825, President John Quincy Adams appointed Benjamin Reeves, George Sibley, and Thomas Mathers as commissioners and instructed them to define the route to Santa Fe, using Boonslick Road as the main highway. The Santa Fe Trail, the Salt Lake City Trail, and finally the Oregon Trail were established. Fun game. These men assembled at Eckert's Tavern to write the reports concerning the survey and marking the road from St. Charles to New Mexico. William Eckert was an aggressive businessman. He also operated a river ferry to bring more customers to his hotel. An article in the March 1838 Clarion newspaper shared the following review. The article could have been written at least a week. However, these days you may want to bring your car. The stables are long gone. Eckert's Tavern, the commodious public house with the sign of the buffalo, has changed the name of has changed the name to St. Charles Hotel. It has been materially improved and thoroughly repaired, and the whole establishment has been fitted in such a manner to render the situation of travelers comfortable and pleasurable. His table shall be bountifully supplied with the substantial necessaries and the luxuries of life. Skillful cooks and attentive, well-trained servants will be provided, and proper attention will be paid by the proprietor to the comfort of those who may favor him with their patronage. A full supply and a variety of choice liquors will be kept at the bar for those who may desire to indulge in that line. The stables are extensive and convenient and will always be well furnished and faithfully attended by experienced hostlers. Mr. Eckert solicits a share of public patronage and hopes to be able to serve you. Let me see how long this chapter. Okay, we are. Got a bit to go. The property was owned by William J. McIlhenny, another prominent St. Charles citizen from 1859 through 1875. From 1875 until about 1900, the building was used as a dentist's office and apothecary shop. About 1900, it was converted into a private residence. In 1962, the St. Charles Historical Society purchased the building and converted it into a museum. Finally, in 1973, the Historical Society moved into the old City Hall building, and the Eckert's Tavern building was reverted into its original function. Today, once again, it is a restaurant and tavern until 1949. There were additional buildings on the south side of the tavern. Let me just check something here. Let's see how the status is. There we go. In that year, there was a fire, and in that fire, a 9-year-old girl died. Interestingly, she did not live here. She lived up on the street at 525 South Main, and there has always been some mystery surrounding her. Did she actually start the fire, or did she simply get trapped there? Actual records are vague, and this question will probably never be answered. Today, there is a pleasant courtyard next to the building. It's an excellent location for a quiet and tasty meal that is mostly quiet. Many visitors have reported the presence of what seems to be a small child. They will feel an insistent pat on their leg or a friendly touch on their hand. A number of people have been affectionately hugged from behind on several occasions. Someone's purse had been tugged from the arm of a chair, and on at least one occasion, food was stolen right off the plate. It's a hungry ghost, guys. In the spring of 2008, a customer reported the following incident. We visit St. Charles every couple of years, and we usually stop here for lunch. The entire Main Street area is interesting, but there's just something about this place. It has a feeling about it, a history. Um, Last time we were here, some strange things happened. First, my purse started moving around. I thought it was the wind, but there was no breeze. As I watched the flap on my purse opened, and it was as if someone looked inside and then let it fall off the arm of the chair. I did not touch it. The hair on my arms kind of prickled. A few seconds later, I felt a touch on my leg, as if someone was patting me trying to get my attention. There was a child at a nearby table, and at first I thought perhaps the toddler was just being friendly. I turned that way, but the child was 10 feet away and certainly not paying attention to us. Actually, the child seemed to be a bit upset, frightened, and it pointed in our direction and said something about little girl hurts. I told the server what happened. She said, "Oh yes, she visits us sometimes. Tries to get someone's attention. A few years ago, there was an accident here. A little girl was burned up. It felt very creepy, but not really scary." And this is the patio next to the tavern. The lost little girl sometimes is reported here. I'll have to add that to my ghost hunt place. Gathering hard scientific data at this location is difficult. Photographs often show mysterious orbs and nebulous mists. However, there are many reflective surfaces in the courtyard, brass trim, such for the most part. Everything mysterious in the photo has a conventional explanation. Evaluation of paranormal activity at this location is difficult. There are simply too many natural phenomena covering up the blending with what could be images of ghosts. At least one professional paranormal investigation group has been here, but the results are inconclusive. Sensitives report an energy, but nothing has been recorded on modern equipment. There are a number of photographs at this location, but everything in the images has a natural explanation. The Riverboat Captain. This stretch of Main Street from the Eckert's Tavern building at 515 South to the corner of 525 is very active. There are solid reports of two more ghosts here. The owner of the shop tells the story of the riverboat captain who lived in the building at 525 South Main. More than one person has seen the spectral vision of him sitting in his rocking chair looking towards the river. Um, and it's said that while alive, his intent was to sit in his bedroom window and watch the river. He became quite irritated when the building across the street was erected because it blocked his view. Reportedly, he gently taps people on the shoulder and moves things around, leaving them in odd places. There are also reports of a creaking rocking chair, calliope music, and distant screech of a riverboat whistle. A strange presence has also been reported in the dark, dank cavity in the rear yard, thought to have been the slave tunnel. Late at night, clanks, moans, and the odor of unwashed bodies have been experienced. There are no records about the tunnel. Obviously, it would have been kept secret, but St. Charles was a significant stop on the trail to freedom, the Underground Railroad. This cavity is less than 200 yards from the Missouri River, with a quick dash between the buildings and a short boat ride. A runaway slave could make his way into St. Louis County and freedom. Other than neighborhood stories, the actual function of the area is not known. It could have been a fruit cellar or part of the building that was destroyed long ago. It is just one more mystery we can add to the list of puzzles left behind on Main Street. Until a few years ago, a clothing store was located at 525 South Main. As one would expect, the merchandise was displayed on racks and hung on the walls to entice customers. Employees and customers reported seeing what looked like a child playing between the racks. Clothing would move by itself and even occasionally fall to the floor. A longtime employee reported, "I would feel a slight draft and a ripple would move down the racks as if a child child was in between the hanging clothes, just having some fun. One day I told it to stop and get away from those dresses. The motion stopped immediately and the draft went away. Just a second, guys. I really need to just kind of reply to this really quick. Okay, we're good. Sorry about that. The sales counter. This I can't talk today. The sales counter was by the front door and near the cash register. There was a toy antique sewing machine. According to the owner, the toy was found neglected in a storage area in an almost empty box. It was in very good condition, and after it was cleaned up, it was displayed in the shop respectfully and proudly. The owners and the employees all knew the story. This was the home of the little girl who died in the fire down the street. It is widely believed that the sewing machine was a treasured toy of the sad, unidentified little girl. Perhaps someone could not bring herself to throw it away. But the sight of it was also painful. Apparently, it was carefully hidden away and forgotten. More than once, when opening the store in the morning, the owners would find that the sewing machine had been moved. It would be found on a different counter on or display case. On a couple of occasions, it was on a shelf so high that they had to get a ladder to get it down. A few years ago, the clothing store moved out of 525 South Main. The owner had a massive sale and sold everything to the bare walls. The racks, the counters, the decorations, and even the toy sewing machine were sold. The riverboat captain seems to still be here, but there have not been any reports of the little girl for several years now. There are no clothing racks, but there are many other tempting items on display. Many people wonder, whoever bought the toy sewing machine, did they take the little girl ghost with it? And that is a very, very interesting question, actually, and a good one. Um, People believe that ghosts can attach themselves to different objects and items and pretty much haunt that. So, could this girl ghost have been haunting her toy sewing machine that she loves so much? Because it would make sense since um, she stopped being reported, and there were no more reports of her after they sold that toy sewing machine to a customer who purchased it. So it very, very well could be. Share a glass of wine with a ghost. I have worked here for several years and nothing strange happened until the other night. A couple of us were cleaning up. I thought we were alone in the building. I was putting up chairs and I heard something in the back storage room, voices. It sounded like a couple of people and I was a bit scared. Some customers left behind, perhaps. I listened closer and realized they were not speaking English. I had a bit of French when I was in high school, and I could hear the man saying, yelling, actually, qui est uh, qui est who is he, who is he? The woman kept saying, il n'y a personne, there is no one, there is no one. Now, obviously, I really butchered that, so I'm sorry for all my French speakers out there. Um, and then there was a loud crash, and the voices stopped. Later, when we gathered enough courage to go back there, a large tray of silverware was crashed on the floor, and several packages of napkins were ripped open. I don't know what happened, but something was there. Eyewitness account of events at 501 South Main. And as you can probably tell from what I just read, 501 South Main, it's a restaurant. The building at 501 South Main is a comfortable and attractive. Ivy creeps up the walls on at least two sides, and the patio to the south is inviting and relaxing. Today is a winery and restaurant, but the location seems to have a slightly disturbing history. This is the second location along Main Street that reports a form of the generic male and female ghosts. The history of the building is incomplete, but is believed to have been built in about 1880. No records with names of the owner or builder have been found. According to one account, oh, okay, I know what this is. Originally housed a saddler's shop run by a French man and his wife. The area south of the building was a service area shared with the horse shoeing operation next door. Local legend says that the Frenchman was a jealous man. His wife was a young and beautiful, and he was older and plain. He was sure he was having an affair. He was sure she was having an affair. One day he confronted her and ended up beating her to death. One longtime resident shared the following neighborhood story. He made good saddles, but business was bad. People were starting to use cars, and good leather work wasn't needed so much. He had a pretty young wife, and she was always he was always accusing her of stuff. Seems one day he lost his temper. We never saw either of them again. He just ran off. Figure he got on a boat or train and was gone. We think he buried her out in the service yard, but the horses churned everything up. We dug around a little bit, but never found anything. The service area is now a pleasant patio. Ironically, many people describe it as romantic. It is shaded by old trees in the summer and warmed by open fires in the cooler months. It is a nice place to relax and share a glass of wine. Most guests never realize there might be a body just below their feet. This area has been extensively excavated and landscaped, but nothing has ever been found. For the, for the matter, there may have never been a saddle shop here. Documents have been located that refer to a saddler shop located at 112 South Main. It has no connection to the site, and there was no evidence of any scandal here. There could have been some confusion about the functions of 501 South Main and 112 South Main. The saddler located at 112 Main was owned by Edward Gutt. In 1895, he employed 8 men full-time as saddlers. He is listed as having a high turnover of employees because his men could not work for many years due to the fumes they inhaled from the chemicals used in tanning leather. In 1906, Gutt took on a partner, Jacob Delger, and moved to a larger location, probably 501 Main, hence the confusion. Edward Gutt died in 1908, and Delger took on a new partner, Joseph C. Mertens. The newly formed Delger and Mertens salary continued until about 1910 when automobiles became more popular and horses were replaced with motor cars. Edward Gutt and his wife were German, not French. They had 2 daughters and lived at 809 Clay Street. They never lived on Main Street. And this is the winery of the Little Hills as it appears today. You can see that's really nice. It's got all that, it has all that ivy on it like they described, and it's just a really, really pretty place to see in person. Um, Edward was elected mayor of St. Charles in 1889. He died quietly in his home on Clay Street. He certainly was not a murderer. In any case, there is no shortage of strange stories connected to 501 Main. Another account tells of a suicide here. An unidentified man, possibly an uh, intern, was found hanging from the railing above the second floor. He is described as dressed in shabby clothes and unwashed. A few years ago, a Main Street resident shared the following story. I never seen him myself, but a couple of people that worked here told me about it. A couple of times someone had been drinking, would look up and say, "What the hell is that?" No one else saw anything, but these guys would swear up and down they saw a body hanging there, in the corner just by the steps. Of course they had been drinking, but kids and drunks see things we don't. There are almost no public records of this building. Of course, there are modern records, but these date back to only about 1930. Prior to that, the building itself is as much of a mystery as the stories reported here. The restaurant has been here for more than 30 years. In 1980, the Augusta region became the first federally approved American viticulture area 8 months before the Napa Valley Ava in California. The wines produced for the restaurant come from this 15 square miles, 39 square kilometers around the nearby city of Augusta. The city of Augusta was founded in 1863 by Leonard Harold, a follower of Daniel Boone. It was originally named Mount Pleasant and had a riverboat landing known as Mount Pleasant. It was a short distance up the Missouri River from St. Charles, and the two cities have always maintained close ties. In 1872, flooding caused the river to change course, leaving a distinct soil type behind in the area between the town and the river. The area's early vineyards were planted about 1880, and since then, a wine with a distinct flavor profile has been produced. There were many wine producers in the area, and the two largest, August Winery and Mount Pleasant Winery, had direct connections to St. Charles. Around the turn of the century, one author wrote, and this is the courtyard of the area of the winery right here. You kind of get a better look on the other side. We've got the umbrellas, ooh, we got the lampposts, we got the ivy still there. It's a nice place. Excuse me. The wine industry was the was of the most importance, as Augusta was situated on nice sunny south slopes, and the land being very fertile, it was especially adapted for the growing of grapes. The entire area, which is now the town property, was once covered with vineyards, as were the surrounding hills. The principal kinds of grapes raised are the Catawba, Norton, Concord, Casey, Clinton, Herbamount, Hartford. Most of these varieties will average 500 to an acre. Nice. I haven't been sleeping good. But I want to finish this so. It is possible that the previous building on the site has some connection to the area wine industry. In other words, this location may have a wine connection dating back many years. The growth of the grape and wine industry was rapid in the area, but the golden days did not last long. The downward trend began in 1884 when the owner of the Augusta winery died. Documents indicate that the company did um, not have sufficient funds to pay the debts of the estate. The reason for the shortfall cannot be fully established, but there is an indication of problems with a leading salesman, referred to within the company as Wine Fritz. His real name is not known. Apparently, Wine Fritz was careless when extending credit out of town accounts and approving large sales to customers in Chicago whose businesses were wiped out by a large fire. Weinfritz disappeared, and some people believe he committed suicide. Could the shabby, unwashed figure hanging in the corner be the spirit of the two generous salesmen? Hmm. I'm alright. I'm alright. I'm alright. I'm just stressed, honestly. Cemetery shadows. Some say the grounds here used to be part of the original Barmeo Cemetery. The exact boundaries of the old cemetery are not known, but until 1853 there was a cemetery along Main Street in this general area. Perhaps a few of the spirits remain uneasy and stir things up here. Another story concerns shadowy visitors. In bright daylight, a group will gather on the sidewalk in front of the building, and a few extra shadows will appear. I need Let's see. One teenage girl relates. I'm sorry, I just had to send a quick message. Um, we were just standing there on the sidewalk waiting for mom to come back with the car, and I was bored. There were 8 of us standing there, and for some reason, I started counting things just because I was bored. There were 3 red cars nearby, 22 people at the tables inside the fence, and a group cast 10 shadows. And our group cast 10 shadows. That didn't soak in for a few seconds, but then I realized there were 8 of us standing on the sidewalk. Then there were 10 shadows. I counted twice. 10 shadows. I touched my brother on the shoulder and told him about it. We counted this time. 10 shadows. I was scared and stepped out of the group. He counted again. Only 7 shadows now. Um, I had moved away from everyone else. He has never let me forget this. He never misses a chance to tell this story. On quiet evenings, unexplained energy readings have been recorded. Investigators with EMF, electromagnetic force detectors, have been reported have reported very high readings. There is nothing in the courtyard to account for this energy, and it tends to manifest only when the courtyard is deserted or late at night. One paranormal investigator told the following story. I was standing near the fence and the detector went off. It registered almost at the top of the scale. There is nothing in the area to account for this energy, no underground services, no electric lights, nothing. It reads about 40 to 50 inches above the ground. I guess you could say about the same height of a person's heart. If a person was standing there, I walked to the end of the fence reading, and the reading just cut off, as if someone had thrown a switch, as if something knew where the fence was located. I cannot explain this phenomenon. I have never seen anything like it on any other investigations. Investigators continue to look for records about 501 Main Street, and the mysterious stories connected to the site continue to accumulate. Strangely, no one seems to be frightened by the entities here. Perhaps the wine relaxes everyone. Perhaps spirits are just not that strong. Perhaps the history is wrong and the stories are just stories. However, the reports continue. The French couple continues to argue the shabby man still hangs around and an extra shadow occasionally inhabits the sidewalks. With that in mind, perhaps it is time to sit down here and share a glass of wine with the ghost. A mysterious couple and an inconvenient graveyard. And then after this, we have one more chapter, and we're done with the book, guys. Next to Berthold Square at 217 South Main is a dramatic 3-story building with balconies overlooking Main Street. Originally, the building was part of a family business, but the structure is so cut up and modified that even the current owners don't know which parts are old and which are new. About 1890, Frederick Ebling built the house, and he lived here with his wife, Mathilda, for many years. He owned a tin shop on Second Street and was evidently quite successful. Reports describe them as a quiet couple, keeping mostly to themselves. Since then, the building has been many things. It was once a it was one it had once been a sheet metal fabrication shop, a paint store, and later an automobile parts store. It has been a fancy house, an inn, and for the past 40 or so years, a restaurant and bar, which is a very, very good restaurant. They have really good food there. This is the third location on Main Street that reports some form of the male and female ghosts. In this case, it is a full manifestation. Researchers agree that there are a number of ways to experience a ghost. The most common is through smell. This could be in the form of body odor, perfume, animal smells, leather, or tobacco. Most people have probably experienced a ghost of this type but don't even notice. You may detect an odd odor, but not connect it to an event. It hangs in the air like a little cloud about the shape and value of a person, but often the ghostly connection is not made. Many times, people report smelling grandma's perfume or father's pipe tobacco. Apparently, an olfactory ghost requires the least energy and can make itself known with very little effort. And this is the Frederick Ebling building as it appears today. Right now is a restaurant known as the Lewis and Clark House. Very good restaurant. Another very common ghost is the proverbial bump in the night. It can be as simple as a knocking or banging, but is often much more complex. Along Main Street, there's a location where reports of a baby crying in the middle of the night are common. Another building has occasional reports of a guitar playing, and in a third location, there are reports of a couple arguing. Again, many people have experienced ghosts of this type but don't connect it to an event or history. They do not even realize that the sounds they hear might have been created by a ghost. The holy grail of ghost hunting is a full manifestation. In spite of what the television shows would lead you to believe, full manifestation is quite rare, and it really is rare. Ghost stories are always stories, and as in any court, anecdotal stories are not acceptable evidence. This the best evidence for ghosts is what is called corroborating stories. This is when a number of people tell the same story. These stories agree in details, but the people have not talked to one another. This evidence is impossible to refute and creates a strong case for the existence of these manifestations. Just inside the door of the restaurant is a service desk. Ew. Ugh. There are always one or two employees stationed here to manage reservations and seat customers. It would be very difficult to sneak past the desk. Straight ahead past the desk is a stairway providing access to the upper floors. The stairway is not new. It was rebuilt a few years ago, but there have always been stairs at that location. Until recently, there was a door at the top of the first landing when the building was functioning as a retail space. This door provided access to the storage rooms. When the new stairs were installed, this doorway was sealed. Over the years, a number of people have told the same story. It always happens on a busy night. The stairs are almost blocked full of people, difficult to get up or down. The hostess looks to the first landing and sees a couple, a man and woman, who do not check in at the desk. The man is always described as wearing a brown houndstooth jacket, and he has a handlebar mustache and an unusual detail. The woman, they never see her face, but she's said to have long, cascading dark hair. She's wearing a red satin dress. An interesting additional detail that at least two of the people described the woman as possibly a prostitute. Naturally, the hostess addresses the couple. If you come back down here, I can seat you in a moment. It's a busy night. The hostess turns her attention to the customers at the desk. When she looks back at the landing, the couple is gone. At least one person reported, I watched them for a few seconds and the man reached out as if taking a doorknob and they passed through a wall. This man and woman remain unidentified and it cannot be Frederick Ebling and his wife. The clothing is wrong. It could be a guest from when the building functioned as a hotel or fancy house, but why would they stay behind? Were they victims of violence or is this place just too special to them? Researchers have been unable to locate documents describing any crimes here, but the records are incomplete. There does not seem to be a pattern to the appearances. However, they seem to appear only when the restaurant and bar are busy. It is yet another mystery with the explanation lost in the midst of history. In addition, the downstairs bar reports troubles with the television. On occasion, the television will simply shut off. It seems to happen when the bar is loud and full of energy, often during a popular sporting event. Everyone will be watching the action, a goal is about to be scored, or the runners are crossing the bases, and all of a sudden, the set turns off. The crowd gets really excited. Patrons have been known to throw things. In fact, the last few years, the restaurant has replaced a television above the bar more than once. It doesn't seem to matter. The television shuts down, usually at the least convenient moment, or at least 2 or 3 times a year. A short time ago, a young girl, 12 or 13 years old, approached a tour guide with the following story. A few weeks ago, we were here, it was really busy, we were waiting for our table. The bar was really loud and people were yelling at the TV, and all of a sudden the TV turned off and they got really mad. Again, perhaps a corroborating story. Researchers are keeping track of these events, but there doesn't seem to be much of a pattern. The only common factor seems to be a loud, rowdy sporting event. Perhaps this ghost is trying to join in the fun, or maybe he just hates sports. I don't blame him. I'm not a big fan of sports myself. I really the only sport I really kind of get behind that I like is hockey. I really do like hockey. Have you ever seen a dog or cat examine something that was not there? Sometimes a cat will actually attack some invisible object. A dog may sit and stare, or even bark and growl at something we don't see. Dogs and cats in digital cameras see farther into the infrared. Sometimes when a cat or dog acts like they see something, they actually are seeing something invisible to people. When the bar is full of energy, is a phenomenon coming through in the infrared. Let me just see. Yeah. According to the laws of physics, energy has to come from somewhere. Many researchers believe that we are seeing more and more paranormal objects because we are providing easily tapped sources of energy. In the past, during an encounter, people would often report a cold spot or perhaps heavy feeling in the air. Today, we have electrical energy in the walls, cell phone batteries, camera batteries, and large screen televisions. The energy in these devices is much easier to utilize. Also, in modern buildings, the environment and temperatures are tightly controlled. Why should a ghost borrow heat and energy from the air when all it has to do is steal power from your cell phone? Many people have unexplainable photographs of orbs and other flashes of energy. Again, these objects tend to appear in digital cameras because of their ability to see beyond visible light. In the bar at 217 Main, paranormal investigators speculate that a manifestation coming through the infrared is coming through the infrared. Infrared signals are often used in the television remote controls. Perhaps this energy coming through hits the TV controls, shutting it down. It is honestly a very, very that's honestly a very big possibility right there. Oh man. Yeah, no. So, God, no. Yep. This morning though, yeah, I got out of bed really quick, and I didn't eat anything, didn't drink anything, and I just stood up too quick. Just got super, super lightheaded, and I just got and like, yeah, I got super lightheaded, and just kind of blacked out for a second, and And when I blacked out, I fell and hit my arm on the floor and just literally just kind of like sliced my elbow up pretty bad. So yeah, no, that hurts today. That really hurts. An inconvenient graveyard. It is the it is in the best interest of an investigator to keep track of buildings. Let me just see. I gotta see. I gotta see. Of an investigator to keep track of buildings in the area that are gone, missing, or destroyed. Did the building burn down or fall down, or was it stolen by aliens? There's a small city park just south of 217 Main Street. For a long time, no records of any buildings there could be located. A few years ago, records finally came to light. There was never a building here until about 1850. The small city park was a private cemetery. Dr. Jeremiah Millington came to St. Charles about 1799. He was the first physician to locate in St. Charles County. He came from the Herkimer County, New York, with his two brothers, his mother, and his sister. He was educated and wealthy and soon became the largest landowner in the area. Jeremiah and his brother Seth were joint owners in a botanical garden west of the city. Records show that he and his brothers um, planted 50 acres with bean plants in 1802. These beans were used to produce castor oil in 1803. Um, by 1803, St. Charles had become the center of the castor oil industry. In those days, doctors made their own medicines, and castor oil was considered an almost magical cure for a number of internal maladies. They manufactured and distributed the first commercially produced castor oil, and essentially it was the petroleum of its day. In 1803, Dr. Millington wrote in a letter. The castor plant grown here had the luxuriant appearance of the bean plant. Its wide spreading leaf and large stalk is not inferior in richness of appearance to the sugarcane of Louisiana. We are able to supply the western county with the valuable medicine of castor oil, having a surplus left which we transport to New York and New Orleans, amounting yearly to several $1,000s, which may be considered a complete savings to that country. We employ the year-round 60 people in this castor oil venture. These guys love their castor oil. Usually the castor bean is grown in warm countries, but the Millingtons decided to try it here. Their experiment was a huge success. The golden oil was very popular. According to the Lewis and Clark diaries, the explorers purchased a quantity of castor oil in bottles to keep their men well. In 1820, the Millingtons discovered coal on their property near Harvester Road, and they opened up the first coal mine in the area. The coal was called stone coal, and was reported to be of the highest quality. Prior to all this, heating was done with wood. The brothers promised free coal to heat the Capitol building, and this was an important factor in bringing the state government to St. Charles. The mine was closed in 1830 after a serious cave-in which several people were killed. By all accounts, Dr. Millington was greatly loved. He covered great distances with his team of fine horses. One record tells of a childbirth, rather a distance from town. He received $2 and a couple of chickens for the treatment. Dr. Millington lived down the street from the graveyard at 322 South Main Street. This building is described as a dignified English style home. It is made lovingly of handmade brick, which the stone cornices of the windows, typical of English architecture. The main part of the building was erected in 1811, just before the earthquakes devastated southern Missouri and was probably damaged and repaired at that time. The front portion was added in 1820. Jeremiah's brother Seth ran a wheelwright shop down the street just below the Kentucky Hotel. A short time later, he converted the shop to a silk factory. He decided to raise silkworms, assuming that if the weather was good for castor oil, silkworms would also thrive. He was going to produce the first silk in this part of Missouri. However, records show that the silk adventure was a total loss. It was one of the few failures of the Millington plan. In general, the Millingtons were a remarkable family. Dr. Jeremiah was appointed postmaster on January 27th, 1823, and served until July 14th, 1826. In other words, he was postmaster while the St. Charles was the first state capital of Missouri. His postal duties were carried out in the Capitol building along with his medical practice, offices for the coal mining operation, and the sales office for the castor oil business. This guy did a lot. Records show that the castor oil factory closed its doors because of the cholera epidemic that devastated St. Charles in 1833 through 1834. In July 1833, more than 100 people died in St. Charles. In 1834, Dr. Seth Millington, Sylvia Millington, Dr. Jacob Millington were lost. With so many of the Millingtons dying, the castor oil factory closed its doors. The last record shows a shipment of oil to New Orleans in 1835. The Millington Cemetery was directly across the street from the first Capitol building. If one was wealthy enough or considered to be sufficiently important to the St. Charles community, he could be buried here. He could be buried here. But all arrangements had to be made through Dr. Jeremiah Millington. One could buy a coffin from him and a headstone, and the good doctor would arrange for the ceremony. It is believed that perhaps 20 people were buried here at its peak. Sometime around 1850, the property became very valuable. Dr. Millington sold the property, probably at a significant profit, dug everyone up, and moved the bodies to the Oak Grove Cemetery west of St. Charles, and no one was left behind. When Seth Millington died in 1834, he was buried here in the Millington Floral Garden. When the property was sold, his tombstone was too large to move, so it was broken up and thrown into the Missouri River. His remains were dis- well, his remains were disinterred and reburied with others at Oak Grove. No tombstone was placed at the new site, and the location of his grave has been lost. Today, many people feel like the location still looks like a cemetery. Comfortable benches, attractive landscaping, and a winding walkway complete the picture. People sit and relax and perhaps read a book or newspaper. Most do not realize this pleasant park was once a small necropolis. All right, guys, we are on the very last chapter of the book. Um, I'd say we finish it. There we go. The Old Farmer's Home. Like I said, this is the last chapter, guys. We have 7 more pages left, and we are gonna finish them. Almost every building on South Main Street has a story to tell. The building at 700 South Main, known as the Farmer's Home Building, seems to have more than its share. The building is old, and many people have lived here. Unfortunately, much of the site's history has been lost or distorted over the years. It is known that the current building dates back to at least 1821 in some form and could date to early as 1805. According to records, the northern half of the block 18 um, was a 27 tanning yard. 27 vat tanning yard. It contained a number of different buildings, and in 1810 it was owned by Missouri's first governor, Alexander McNair. In 1811, Don Tanyan became the owner. He was the second commandant while St. Charles was under the control of the Spanish. John Fraser took over in 1822 and built additional structures on the block at the time. The structures are gone, and records about them are quite vague. The tax ledger shows an increase in 1823 about um, um, in 1823, a good indicator of new buildings, and a decrease a few years later. It is believed that one or more of these buildings burned down during that time and were not rebuilt. The farmer's home building has been modified and was possibly rebuilt before Christian Way bought it in 1854. At that time, they made extensive repairs. We named it Farmer's Tavern and lived there with his family. It remained a tavern until Prohibition in 1925. The name tavern is a poor indicator of the importance of this location in the 19th century. It also functioned as an inn. for travelers coming through St. Charles headed to the west. A ferry taking people and goods across the Missouri operated at the foot of the nearby Perry Street. As a result, 700 South Main was a prime location for a hotel. And there is the farm store. St. Charles was surrounded by prosperous farms. When the farmers came to town to sell their products, this tavern was a favorite stopping place. In front of the tavern was a deep well. A large bell hung in the post near the pump. When the farmer arrived, he would ring the bell to summon an ostler, a hostler without the H. The ostler watered the horses, then took the rear of the tavern, where, according to advertisements, was a large covered stable. A recent visitor from in 2008 from the East Coast reported, "It was a hot day and I was getting a bit tired. My wife wanted to look at a couple more shops, so I sat on a bench in front of the tobacco shop. I might have dozed off a bit. I swear I heard horses just in front of me. I looked up expecting to see the carriage right in front of me, but it wasn't there. Then I heard, clear as anything, a bell ringing. It rang 3 times, but there isn't any bell anywhere around here." Far. Oh, I accidentally turned that off. I need to keep that just to see how. Farmer's Tavern has passed through many owners. According to records, in 1849 was owned by Melchion Thoreau. That's a cool name, Melchion Thoreau. During his ownership, newspapers tell of a city park with a tavern near the tavern. Often, when the tavern was busy, patrons would move to the park to socialize. It became so popular that it was soon nicknamed City Loafers Park. Some nearby businesses complained, but Mr. Thoreau defended the practice. Apparently, most of the loafers were his customers. Usually, Missouri taverns were named after owners such as Eckert's Tavern, just down the street. As products of the pioneer community, tavern keepers were at the top of the social scale. Taverns were placed for travelers to stop and for the weary to find solace, good food, and pure water. When St. Charles attained the status of a metropolis, taverns gradually changed, becoming homes. The name of Farmer's Tavern soon changed to Farmer's Home. In 1856, Christian Waji bought the farmer's home. The St. Charles Reveal newspaper dated September 1856 tells of Mr. Waji um, making making many improvements and changing the name to Farmer's Home. He had 6 sons that was described as a beautiful daughter. Sadly, the daughter died when she was only 7 years old. The entire town turned up for her funeral. She was one of the first to be buried in the new Barmail Cemetery just outside of town. Many stories surround this old and popular building. It seems that something was always happening here. A newspaper article on February 26, 1876 reported, "Yesterday a terrible tornado struck St. Charles. The farmer's home tavern was among the building's damage. The large stable was completely destroyed. The north end of the building was completely blown away. Um, a man by the name of by Og Sling, one of the town loafers, was taking refuge in the stable. He was clinging to a door, and the man dropped in the street 50 feet away, and he was not even scratched or bruised." Since 1927, this building had been the home and business of John Dengler. Sadly, John died a short time ago. He was 82 years old. He had a long and productive life, but he is missed. He's one of the people directly responsible for the current condition of St. Charles Main Streets. His efforts helped turn a seriously declining area into what many call a tourist mecca. And then you will find a friendly wooden figure in the front of the current tobacco shop. John's father also ran a tobacco shop here. It is located in what was the ladies' dining room of the inn. Sometimes, even above the pleasant odor of the tobaccos, visitors say they smell ham and beans. When the building was functioning as an inn, ham and beans were often served. The dish could be prepared quickly and in large quantities. Travelers would often stop here for a quick, filling, inexpensive meal. True John's wife once said, perhaps the upstairs ghost cook wants to make sure the ghosts are passing through can still smell a good ghost meal. True passed away a few years ago, but her favorite story was the one she called was the one she True passed a few years ago, but her favorite story was about what she called the impatient salesman. John was very active in the St. Charles business community and often would come home rather late. As True relates, she would be home alone waiting for John, and she would hear someone banging on the downstairs door calling her name. Assuming John had locked himself out again, she would go downstairs, but when she got to the front door, no one was there. Then, after a few seconds, someone would be banging on the upstairs balcony door, calling her name. She would go up there again, nothing. This would continue 3 or 4 times until one or the other got tired of the game. It was just like someone wanted to sell me something or deliver something, she said, but he never stuck around long enough to talk to me. True also reported strange phone activity. I would hear the phone ring. Twice when I went to answer it, I discovered that the handset was off the hook, she said. There was no way it could have rang, it rang and no one else was around to take it off the hook. Out of everything that happened, it is the phone thing that really gave me the willies. An active and popular place for its entire history, there are many stories based at the farmer's home. One talks of a duel on the stairs leading to the upstairs rooms. Ghostly figures are reported, swords in hands, fighting up and down. This could be the stuff of a good or bad Errol Flynn movie. There are many more stories about duels in the St. Charles area. The early city residents and visitors must have been hard seasoned people. Beyond any doubts, there were shootings, assaults, probably more than one duel. Still, there is no hard evidence to support this. Any duels would have taken place out of town, out of sight, but there is some evidence to suggest that there was a dueling field just behind the Capitol building, a short distance to the north. If there actually was a confrontation here, it probably would have been an assault or robbery. However, who can resist the romance of a duel? It's much more fun, ghostly, and makes better stories than a common crime. Records list the Farmer's Tavern as a popular gathering place. In an advertising dated 1821, we learn that J.J. Dozier was the owner. The state capitol office had just opened, and obviously a new business opportunity presented itself. To quote the advertisement, I invite the legislators to board at my farmer's tavern lodging 2 bits a night. I specialize in good food, cornbread and common fixings, 2 bits a meal. Ham and beans, 2 bits a meal. White bread with chicken fixings, 3 bits or 37 a meal. We have 4 more pages left, guys. We're almost done with this book. John and his wife use the second floor of the building as living quarters, and in addition to his tobacco shop, he rented space to other businessmen on the first floor. Other people in the building have had strange encounters that are difficult to explain. One woman who was renting the space next to the tobacco shop once accused John of playing a prank on her. She was walking down a staircase in the back of the building and distinctly felt a hand on her shoulder, and a voice whispered eerily in her ear, calling her name. Startled, she hurried down the stairs to find Dengler, just walking in the door. He had been in a meeting that had kept him out of the building all morning. At first, she assumed that he had played a trick on her. She quickly realized that she had no explanation for what just happened. Several people have also heard heavy footsteps on the same stairs and in the hallways of the building. Dengler's daughter Laura, once terrified by the sound of laughter that came from nowhere. John and True once had a strange experience while painting and restoring the upstairs living area. In 1982, John told a local newspaper, for about 4 days, a French-speaking apparition seems to delight in playing tricks of floating cigarette packs in the air and hiding them. Unexplainable, too, was how the radio talk show would suddenly be switched to rather unusual classical music without the dial being changed. On the fifth day, a baby was heard crying, whereupon it was soothed by a calming French voice. Also during the renovations, John and True would find a neat pile of torn up wallpaper lying on the floor in the middle of the room. It was like old fashioned wallpaper, not like anything we had in the building, they said. There was more activity, much more reported on the site. In the upstairs apartment, a puddle of water occasionally appears in the middle of the kitchen floor. At first, a family cat was blamed for not using his litter box. Ceilings were checked, plumbing was checked, and no leak was discovered. The refrigerator was checked, but the refrigerator is several feet from where the water appears. Finally, after testing the water, it was found the puddle was pure water, no contamination from the outside or from plumbing. There is no logical explanation for the existence of the puddle. It has been seen several times since then. Inside the main tobacco shop, there are cabinets used to store the premium pipe tobaccos. This product, the product is stored in big glass jars with a latch to hold them closed. John reported that more than once he would open the cabinets and it was as someone had sampled the product. There would be little piles of tobacco on the edge of the shelves. He also pointed out that the only cherry flavored tobacco would be sampled. If he rearranged the stock the next time it happened, the cherry flavored tobaccos would be stirred once again. First of all, he said, rats and mice and bugs are not interested in tobacco. In some cases, it's poisonous to them. He finished with a grin. Besides, I don't think they could get the jars open. In 1994, John's daughter held a seance with a Ouija board. We asked if he was a good ghost or a bad ghost. He said he was a good ghost. We found out his name was Albert. He was a Confederate officer who had been impressed by the Union Army at what is now the Trailhead Brewery on Main Street. The building was used as a Union prison during the Civil War. We asked Albert if he had owned any slaves. He said yes, as many as I could get my hands on. We asked him what he was doing in our building. He said he was the protector of the building. We have not heard much of him since then. Sometime about 1985, a man with a toddler was standing in the hall waiting for his wife. There's a heart-shaped woven wheat decoration hanging on the wall. The man came running into the shop all excited. He said that the weaving had floated off the rail and had come to him. He grabbed it with his hand as it floated through the air. When it comes to research or stories about St. Charles, John Dengler was everyone's first stop. He always knew the names, dates, and places. He could share with you the joys of marriage, birth, and anniversaries. He also knew where a few of the skeletons literally were buried. He spent many years on Main Street and kept so much history in his memories. John's son-in-law, Larry Munich, is taking over the business, and Farmer's Home will stay open. In fact, it is hoped that with as long John lived here and as strong as his spirit was, perhaps before long we will hear some stories about John. Who can say how many people passed through these doors? Names are lost in history. Most passed through without incident, but there must have been a few interesting inhabitants, people on the run, people broken and moving west to a new life, and perhaps even a few tragic lovers. So, other than perhaps John, who are the ghosts that haunt the farmer's home building, are they former guests of the hotel or the spirits of those left behind in the nearby old St. Charles Borromeo Cemetery? Research indicates that the French ghost may be Antoine Marco, one of the building's original owners. We will never know, but most people say they are welcome to stay, but they've got to behave themselves, they add with a smile. About the author. Michael Henry is born in the Midwest, lives in the Midwest, and as a result is not typical of the Midwest. He has been a student of the paranormal for more than 30 years and had multiple degrees, including a PhD in communications. He has worked as a high school teacher, college professor, musician, mechanical engineer, computer consultant, and historical researcher. Currently, he's a full time magician performing all over the world. not just the Midwest, including Belfast, Northern Ireland, London, Las Vegas, and Chicago. He also manages a ghost tour, providing a well-documented historical and paranormal tour of the historic district in St. Charles, Missouri. Henry currently shares a house in the Midwest with 2 cats, 15,000 books, and several artificial flamingos. And that, guys, is The Ghost of St. Charles. We finally finished it, guys. We finally finished the book. So if you guys like this video, be sure to hit that like button. You can dislike it if you dislike it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button, become a member of the Crypto Crew today. Also, guys, stay tuned for this coming up week. There's going to be some special streams that I have planned, interactive ones as well. Tomorrow is going to be a cryptid trivia game show, so I hope you guys come out for that. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much again. You've been watching Cryptocast. I've been your host, Parker. Stay spooky, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.